Shem haMephoresh. Shem haMephoresh. Shem haMephoresh. So in today's video, we will be tackling what may be one of the most requested topics since I started this channel, and that is how to work with the angels of the Shem haMephoresh. Or more commonly known as the Shem angels, and specifically how to work with them in my style. As you know, if you've been watching my channel, my whole approach to magic is to blend folk magical techniques with Solomonic magic and with grimoire magic in order to create a more accessible, practical kind of spellcraft that is powered by grimoire spirits, by Solomonic spirits, but that is something manageable, that is something doable, but stays grounded in tradition. I try to synthesize or create techniques that blend these elements in a practical way for a modern person doing this magic. And this is how I work when I do client work or when I do work for myself. What are the angels of the Shem haMephoresh, or the Shem angels? These are angels that are connected with the zodiac, basically. The Shem angels derive from the great divine 72-lettered name. Somewhat mysterious idea, but what we need to know is that this name, or the 72-lettered formula, is derived from 3 verses in Exodus, and by means of various Kabbalistic calculations, these angelic names are kind of extracted from this formula. But I will quote to you from my friend Aaron Leach, and he says, "The Shem haMephoresh, the name of extension, is the famed 72-fold name of divinity. In truth, it is a collection of 72 3-lettered names which embody the great wheel of the zodiac. From these names we derive 72 angelic princes, responsible for the manifestation of the zodiacal forces in reality, and who act as guides and protectors through our world. The Shem haMephoresh has been cited with numerous Middle Age and Renaissance texts. Most recognizable to those of us in the West would perhaps be Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy. It was sometime after this, in the 17th century, that Kircher added his knowledge and experiences with the name of extension into popular Kabbalistic lore. In the following century, the name is well known among the brotherhood known as the True Knight Mason Elect Cohens of the universe, or the Elo Cohens. A figure most important for popularizing the use of the Shem angels, or bringing them to our modern attention, is Robert Ambelain. This is a French occultist born in 1907. Now, one of the exciting things, or one of the attractive things about the Shem angels, is their functions are very practical. We find angels governing the occult sciences, spiritual protection, overcoming enemies, removing witchcraft, healing illnesses. Pretty much anything that you could imagine, there will be a Shem angel that governs that, and it will be able to work with you in a very practical way. They are attractive in much the same way I would argue that the spirits of the Guisha are attractive. The technique that I'm going to share with you is one of my simplest techniques. It's deceptively simple. We're working with a single taper candle, the pentacle, the angelic pentacle, and it will culminate in the creation of what I refer to as a talismanic water. You don't need a lot of materials to do this work. Even in Ambelain's presentation, in which he's doing the full ritual evocation of that angelic power, it is relatively modest by the standards of French occultism at the time. All you will need is a white taper candle. You'll need a candlestick, of course, to put the candle in. You'll need a dinner plate, some flat preferably, like this. This is where the work is going to go in. As you know, I like to use plates as the basis of my work. The reason is that, of course, you can catch the wax drippings, that's one part, but I like to inscribe various things on these plates, so that's another practical thing. You will also need a bowl with water, you will need some salt, right? You will need a censer, a charcoal disc, and some incense. Some church incense is fine. You will also need some oil, preferably holy anointing oil, or you could opt for King Solomon oil if you want to use a hoodoo condition oil. A clean piece of card or paper for the seal. Pen. These have to be water soluble. This is important. These have to be water soluble, and you will see why by the end of the technique. But when you inscribe the seal of the angel on the card or paper, you do this with this water soluble ink. These are not hard to find. It's usually the cheapest kind of fine liner that you can get at the stationery store, and you can test that by just scribbling on a piece of paper, licking your thumb, and then smearing it. If the ink smears, it is water soluble, and that's what you will be using. You will also need that trusty old magical friend, the permanent marker. And the reason for that is you will be inscribing their sigil on the candle in marker. You do this in red. In his treatise on this system of magic, or on the angels of the Shem, haMephoresh, Amber Lane describes the seal being inscribed in black and red, and the sigil and the name of the angel are done in red. So we'll be using that same color correspondence. We inscribe the sigil of the angel on the candle with red permanent marker. This is one of the, take it from someone who's spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to draw on candles, permanent marker is your friend. If for some reason, for aesthetic reasons, you don't like the idea of permanent marker, another option would be to take oil paint and a brush and paint it on the candle, or you could take a pin and scratch it into the candle. But that, to my opinion, is not going to be very accurate, and is not going to be really in the spirit of this work. We want to tune into this sort of visual aesthetic of the seal as much as we can, right? So for that we need a red sigil on a white candle. Of course, you have to begin by selecting the angel that is best suited for your magical objective. And in this example, I've decided to do a protection spell under the aegis of the Shem angel Sitael, quoted as being great protection against weapons, ferocious beasts, and this sort of thing. Working with it in this way might be suitable for someone who lives in a dangerous neighborhood and is scared of being mugged or anything like that, anything where you might experience some sort of physical threat. But generally speaking, we're going to be granted protection by working with this angel. You would go ahead and you would inscribe the sigil and the name of the angel within 2 concentric circles, in red in the center of the circle, and then within the bounds of those 2 circles you will write the psalm or the verse of the song that is associated with the angel in question. Now, each one of these 72 angels has a versicle from a psalm that is associated with that angel, and that verse is really the key to invoking the power of that angel. Now remember, we are really just petitioning the angel. We are invoking the angel in a certain sense, but we're not doing a full ritual evocation. Instead, we're doing it more in the form of a petition, in the style of a candle spell. Now, having said that, one of the fascinating things about Amber Lane's presentation of his system of Shem angel magic is there are several references throughout the text made to one of the magical tools which he calls the Luciferum, which is a candle, right? And he writes, "The substitution of the almond or hazel wand of the magicians of former times by a wax taper is well known. Le Forestier, in his book on the Elu Kohen, page 85, cites text from the 18th century drawn from letters by Martinez de Pasquale to his disciples, which show him using the wax candle in place of the operative wand. The Luciferum is the magic wand of theurgy, replacing the branch of almond or hazel, which are mentioned in ordinary magic rituals. When not being used and held in the right hand of the theurgist, it is put upright into the candlestick at the foot of the altar. Now, the Luciferum in Amber Lane's presentation of his system is one of the magical tools that he used, but I find it fascinating, this equation of the candle to the wand. Later in the text, he explains why that is, and he kind of justifies it by means of gematria, Hebrew gematria, where the word wand and candle can kind of be exchanged, having the same numerological value. Nonetheless, in his thinking, the candle can operate as a kind of wand, and that's how we're going to be using it in the spell. We will be wielding it as a wand. This is one of the reasons I favor working with a taper candle in this instance. It is of course more accessible, it's nice, but it is more wand-like. So then how do we proceed? First, light your charcoal disc, and then you will proceed by saying the exorcism of the fire over the charcoal and the incense, the exorcism of the water and the salt. You add a little bit of salt to the water, and that's how you'll be making holy water. Take some of the anointing oil, whether that's the King Solomon oil or the holy anointing oil, and you will put some of that on your finger, and then you will draw a hexagram on the plate in oil. Hexagram, of course, is the Star of David, but it is also the seal of Solomon. This gives us power over the angels and the spirits. In Amber Lane's work, he also explains that the pentacle is to be laid on a lead hexagram. Now, we won't be using a lead hexagram, we will be creating an energetic approximation. We place our pentacle on the plate, we will add some incense to the charcoal, and then once this smoke is rising, take the seal and we will pass it through the smoke, saying the invocation of Solomon to consecrate the seal. I'm miming the spell because I'm not going to do the work on camera, that would be quite disrespectful, but I'm giving you an idea of how this would play out. Then you place it on the plate where you've got drawn your seal with oil, with holy anointing oil, and of course when you draw that seal of Solomon, that Star of David on the plate, you can visualize it in white light. Place your candlestick and your candle. You will take the holy water, you will sprinkle it on the candle, and you will say the exorcism of the wax, right, just to prepare the candle. Now the stage is set. Add a small pinch of incense, and as that smoke begins to rise up, you will light the candle, and then you will take the candle up and you will use it kind of like a wand as it's lit, and you will say the invocation or the conjuration of the angel. If you can imagine this being a hazel wand or an ebony wand or an almond wand, you're kind of using the candle to invoke that angel. You bring the candle down, and what I want you to do is to make the sign of the cross like that with the candle over the candlestick and the seal on the horizontal plane. So if you can imagine that being drawn in light. And you will begin to recite or repeat the verse of the psalm that is associated with the angel. And as you do that, you look into the flame. Do that for a minute or two until you feel that energetic connection happen. When you feel that shift in the energy in the environment, and it is unmistakable. Angelic energy has got a lively, blissful, kind of dynamic quality. Everything seems to sparkle. There are feelings of delight and joy that well up, or even sometimes there can be feelings of awe. That's a very common response. It might be subtle, you know, it doesn't always have to be fireworks. It might be just a subtle shift, and once you perceive that, then you will scry into the flame and you will state your petition, what it is that you really want. And then you might scry the flame for a little bit, let yourself visualize your outcome if you like. That's not entirely, strictly speaking, necessary, but some people like to do that. Leave the spell to burn. It should take anything from 4 to 6 hours, depending on the kind of candle, how big the candle is, and so on. And when the candle has burnt down, you will return back to the confection and you will say a brief dismissal and thanks to the angel. Now we move into the final phase of the spell, and that is working with the seal. And this is where things are going to get a little bit interesting. You will take your seal, which you have inscribed in water-soluble ink, and then you will take the holy water and you will slip the seal into the holy water. You will submerge it in the holy water, and there in the holy water you will notice that the ink begins to dissolve and kind of vanish into the water, and the seal will become lighter and lighter and lighter. There might be some trace of it left on the paper, but let it dissolve until most of it's kind of dissolved into the water. And then when that has happened, you can take the seal out, and then you will use this water in a spiritual wash, which is to say you will bathe yourself in that water. You will add it to a bucket of water or into the hot tub, and then you will submerge yourself in that, provided that the work that you're doing with the angel is to draw an influence around you. So in this case, we're doing a protective work, so it makes sense to want that influence around, and you will bathe yourself in it. Similarly, if it was a love spell, or it was something to bring wealth, or to help you with studies, to increase your knowledge of occult sciences, anything where you're wanting to keep that energy around you, you would bathe yourself in it. Alternatively, if it was a more destructive work, and there are angels of vengeance, angels for overcoming enemies and adversaries and that sort of thing, in which case you would use this water and deploy it somewhere where your enemy or your adversary was going to walk over it. Or alternatively, if it was a love spell targeting someone, you might add it to a little bit of food, or pour it on their doorstep, whatever way. There are a lot of ways of sneaky little tricks like that. What am I doing here? This, of course, this method of dissolving a sigil and even psalms into water isn't something I just sucked out of my thumb. We see this, of course, in Solomonic magic, in the Greek magical papyri. There are various formulae where the magician will write an invocation, a psalm, a sigil, something of that sort, on either a plate or a piece of parchment or a leaf, and then following various invocations to that spirit, the ink will be dissolved into water and then either drunk, bathed in, or deployed in some way. Often it will be bathed in, so sometimes there will be formulae for removing a fever, right? And then a prayer will be written, a certain psalm might be written on a piece of parchment, the psalm might be dissolved and then drunk. This is a classic way of then translating the magical power of that seal, psalm, or a sigil into a form of magical contagion. As always, linked down below, you will find a PDF that includes the entire formula laid out very carefully. It includes all the angelic sigils, all the angelic functions, their rulerships. It includes the spell formula, and in such a way that you can follow it step by step and perform the work as I describe. In addition to that, I include some extra material, some extra nuances, some extra stuff that you can do with this work that I've not included in the video. I always do this with all my PDF bundles. I add something extra, and it's not that what I've shown on the camera won't work by itself. If you did what I showed you in the video, it'll work just fine, but I'm giving you a little bit extra, something that will be more detailed, adds a little bit more flair to the work, and hopefully will add more value. That's my main objective with that. There's another thing that we need to address before we finish up, and that is the nature of the sigils that I've included. That means basically the sigils that I've drawn from Amber Lane's work. These tend to be the ones that have been popularized. There is a lot of hand wringing around the provenance of these sigils. There are claims that they are problematic, that they're somehow faulty or mistaken, or that these sigils cause problems. And then there are plenty of occultists who have worked with them without any problem. So, in my opinion, these sigils are fine. They're very powerful, they're very potent. Even if you work with them in a very simple way, they get results. I think it's a bit of superstition that's kind of evolved around this system of magic around these sigils, certainly. And often, as with superstitions, there is some sense of fear and anxiety, which I sometimes suspect is cultivated on purpose to dissuade people or scare people away. I personally don't think you should worry about these sigils being faulty in some way. Having said that, if this is something that truly bothers you, then an alternative would be to use the Kabbalistic rose and take the Hebrew names of the angels and then create a sigil, you know, using the standard Kabbalistic rose technique, or alternatively a monogram sigil using the English letters in combination in the way that Agrippa describes in the 3 books of occult philosophy. Super duper easy. Working in that way, of course, has its own merits in that it's your sigil, you've made it, it'll have a special meaning to you. So those are alternative options that I could suggest, in which instance all you would do is you would replace the sigil that you have generated with a sigil that is recommended in the text. The rest of the procedure stays exactly the same. That's all. That's what I have for you today. Remember to like and to subscribe. It really helps me if you subscribe to the channel. And then, of course, there is a way linked down below that you can support the channel, help keep the lights on. If you don't buy my products, if you don't buy my PDF bundles, consider supporting the channel below with a one-time tip or donation. Buy me a coffee, and that really helps me, keeps me motivated. It allows me to buy materials, it allows me to take care of my hardware, and keeps me making more content. So let me know your thoughts, comment down below, and until next time.